movie. All right, what are we talking about this subject?
I don't know. Did you want to do the murders in Florida?
No, I think we already talked about that with our predictions.
Well, let's move on to this one.
All right.
So I wanted to talk about.
Well, let's get into our segue. We kind of jumped the gun, but this is BS with Joe. We talk about all different kinds of things. We try to focus on Florida because that's where we live, but we do current events and more political commentary on things like that. If you haven't been a subscriber to the show, but bring it in, Joe. What do we got today?
I wanted to talk about the decline of the working man in America.
All right.
And I'm gonna throw out a whole bunch of information to you to start this conversation, and then we'll actually have a conversation about it.
All right.
Because I want us to both kind of be on the same page.
All right.
Manufacturing will face a 2 million person shortage by 2030, with plumbers and electricians already at 500,000 short of what we really should have. Right. So, 76% of college students pursue higher education not for better opportunity, but to avoid the stigma of a vocational schooling.
I could see that.
Yeah. The Industrial Revolution thrust forward the U.S. and moving it away from an agricultural to an industrialized powerhouse.
That it did.
So as that happened, and as it progressed, there was a demand for higher education to shift to practical skills such as engineering, agriculture, and mechanical arts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This then created a gap in affordability and a hierarchical divide.
Okay.
Okay, so the education system, all of a sudden, college degrees became very expensive.
Because it was higher education versus the vocational education.
Exactly. That was around the turn of the century.
Yes.
When mechanical arts, engineering, and agricultural degrees...
The turn of the 19th century, not the 20th century.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm old.
I know it's hard to fathom that we're in a new century.
So around that time, there was a fashion of detachable white collars. All right, these stiff collars that you put them on. They didn't actually attach to your shirt. You just put them on and then really starched, stiff white collar.
Yeah, that's what the ties would go around. This is more of just a post-Victorian period.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they became a symbol of status while kind of separating managerial people from the actual working class. And then there were campaigns that emphasized the practicality and durability of work shirts, which were offered by Sears and Montgomery Ward's in two colors, blue and gray. So this kind of created the whole white collar, blue collar thing. All right. So this is all 1920s. All right.
Yeah.
Then World War II happened. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In World War II, coming out of World War II, Pennsylvania alone had triple the steel manufacturing capabilities of Germany and Japan combined.
Well, yeah, because they needed steel for the war.
Yes. So wages rose over the next 10 years by 60%.
Especially for the working class, because those are
Right.
the ones working in the factories.
Exactly. Housing costs are averaged around 22%, creating a robust middle class.
Yeah.
While factory workers now lived right alongside their managers because of this affordable housing.
Right.
Yes. So then, FDR came up with the GI Bill. And all these veterans coming back from World War II I think it was about 1.7 million of them took advantage of the GI Bill.
Could I stop you real quick on
Sure.
that? I'm going to give you a little bit of information on some of the history I've had from some of that time period. So
You weren't alive back then.
well, I know, but I lived in Pueblo, Colorado. Pueblo, Colorado was one of the largest steel mills around that time frame.
Okay.
Because not only did Pittsburgh make a lot of steel, but so did Pueblo.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of housing right around the steel mill that was from the company funded those housings.
Right.
And
And it was cheap.
it was cheap. And the communities there were very vibrant at the time because everybody had a good working wage, everybody was able to prosper, create families. I think that was part of what began the baby boom generation.
I think you're right.
There was a little cafe there. It was called the Mill Stop,
Okay.
and it was a little cafe. And that cafe started when that steel mill was there, and it was there until I left Pueblo in the early 2000s.
So around that time, there was a great pride in the American worker. From even the 1900s all the way through the 1950s, there was a great pride in the American worker. And this started to decline when FDR in the 40s came up with the GI Bill, which, not saying it's a bad thing, it's a good thing. 1.7 million veterans got a free education. And then things around the world started happening like the Cold War and Sputnik and the space race. And all of a sudden, very highly skilled, very intelligent jobs were stigmatized, I guess, and held up to a higher standard, higher lofty goal, I guess.
Well, I think with that, I think a lot of it changed because you think about it, around that time frame with the Cold War, a lot of efforts went from military standards to spy and espionage.
Right.
And also there was the space race.
So then there was the Modern Education Act of 1958.
Okay.
Okay. Which basically what it did is it made it harder for the average American to afford college. Yes, the GI Bill was there for the veterans, but these people that, were... This is when the shift started, okay, is in 1958 with that bill. And it was starting to get to the point where the father who had this, working class job for years was now embarrassed to talk to his kids about what he did for a living.
The trade crafts.
Yes. And they didn't present it to their kids as, hey, this is an opportunity. This is something you should really look into. No.
Yeah, who wants to be a plumber working under subfloors of houses and be covered in shit all day?
Exactly. So then also around the same time, globalization began to reshape things. 1982, the SEC ruling 10b-18, it created a legal loophole that allowed companies to buy back stock without all the restrictions that were in place from the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. So you saw the S&P 500. There's 449 companies in the S&P 500. They used between 2003 and 2012, which I know that's quite a bit later, but that's when I guess the light bulb went off. Now, we can do this now.
Well, I think a lot of that was also maybe some deregulations because we talked about Glass-Steagall Act and things like that.
Right.
Maybe there was something in the Glass-Steagall Act that prevented that from happening, and now it allows it to happen.
It's possible.
Or maybe the government deregulated something.
Between 2003 and 2012, these S&P 500 companies used 54% of their earnings to buy back $2.4 trillion in stock. 38% of those earnings went to pay dividends. This doesn't leave a whole lot left over for wages.
No. And the dividends. So when people pay stocks on dividends, like for anybody who doesn't know how stocks work, if you're a stockholder and you got a blue stock, which is a higher end stock, and this is the stocks that are probably trading or bought back, when you get earnings off that stock. So if the company earns, let's say $50 million, but they have 200 shares of this blue chip stock, that millions of dollars get spread out evenly with those 200,000 shareholders.
Right.
And so they get money back from the company being profitable, not the employees who are working hard for that company, making that company profitable.
In 1971, there was a federal report called Work in America. You look it up. At that time, the narrative, well, this report said that less than 1 in 10 television characters is a blue-collar worker. In sharp contrast to the 1930s, and when in the 1930s they were noble and respectable. Mm-hmm. Now, in the early 70s, those that were represented as a blue-collar worker were ostracized and denigrated. You know, they were represented as idiots, basically.
You weren't smart enough to get your PhD.
Right.
Yes.
The Assistant Labor Secretary Jerome Roscoe quoted in 1970s Time magazine, I don't know what month, but he was in Time magazine. He said, "The American working man has lost relative class status and been denigrated so harshly that their jobs have become last resort." This is
people didn't want those jobs until it was the last resort.
This is 1970.
Wow.
Yeah. Shop classes became outdated and typically enrolled troubled kids.
I'm going to pause you real quick on that. That kind of, I'm thinking back to my father's and my grandfather.
Okay.
So my father was a grocery store manager. Mm-hmm. A manager is a higher position where it's more respectable than because he had employees under him.
Right.
My grandfather, he worked in the oil field. I'm not exactly sure what he did in the oil field, but he worked in the oil field. And everybody looked at somebody that worked in the oil field as dirty and, whatever,
See,
crude.
I was originally thinking when you said he worked in the oil field, I was thinking this guy's got pretty good money.
Right. I mean, the oil field, because I worked in the oil field for a little bit. I moved drilling rigs. You can make good money, and there are people that have a lot of money
for it.
Yeah, but there's a reason why they're called roughnecks, and it's not because they're burly and rough. It's because they're crude and rude sometimes. But go ahead.
1983. The U.S. Secretary of Education said that there was a rising tide of mediocrity. That was 1983. Ronald Reagan was the president in 83.
Yes, he was.
Yes. So, from 1967 to today, the middle class income has fallen. And if you look at the chart of union membership versus middle class income, it almost follows exactly the same. So as the unions died, the middle class died. In, I think it was 1982, there was an air traffic controller strike. 17,000 air traffic controllers went on strike. Ronald Reagan fired them all. Not only did he fire them all, but he blocked them from ever holding a job in the industry again. This was a backbreaker for the unions. And then union membership just kept declining. So between 2003 and 2013, apprenticeship programs, which was really the alternative to college, declined by 40%.
Well, and to let you know, also with those apprenticeship programs, a lot of them were funded by the companies.
Right.
Because how are you going to get the skilled labor? Because nobody's wanting to go to college or trade schools for it.
Right.
You would have somebody that would be, you would hire on mediocre into the company and say, hey, we're going to train you for this position because we need this filled. We're going to do an in-house school for you to train you and give you that skill.
Right. The last bit that kind of goes along with that I'm going to throw at you is 6 million U.S. manufacturing jobs disappeared between 2001 and 2010.
A lot of them probably went over to China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Manufacturing GDP, which is the gross domestic product, the manufacturing portion of the GDP fell from 27% in 1965 to just 12% in 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you can see where our country has declined.
Big time.
Oh, yeah.
It's a systemic decline.
Mm-hmm.
During this time, if you look at, and I know Germany has their issues, but from post-World War II till now, Germany has actually improved their manufacturing and their middle-class wages. And they're pretty much the only country in the world that has.
Yeah. But Germany's got their own problems.
They do. But they have a middle class.
They have a middle class. Now, you text me today a little bit, like, I know this is off topic. Well, actually, let's stay on topic because we can use that for another segment. With all this decline in America and with manufacturing and trade skills, how do you think we could recover from all this?
The shift has to happen from it's the idea of vocational skills versus college. Okay, college is great, but you can graduate with a 4-year degree and make less money than a plumber or an electrician or a framer. These people make good money.
Oh, yeah.
And the current job market, they're screaming. The U.S. housing market since 2008, we have a shortage of what, over 1 million homes?
Yeah, we have a lot of that is immigration caused. Because if you look at the number of immigrants we have that came into our country versus, because we didn't have that big of a housing shortage, 4 years ago or even 5 years ago.
Okay.
Now we have a really extreme housing shortage, and I think a lot of it.
And we don't have the workers. We don't have the skilled workers to build the housing.
We don't. And if you look at housing quality, like I watch a lot of quality videos on home building, the quality on homes have declined immensely. And that goes to the skilled labor.
The average person that's working in the positions of electrician, plumber, trim carpenter, framer, they're in their 50s.
Yeah, they're the Gen Xers.
Yeah.
And when the Gen Xers, I feel like I've learned skills over the years, and you telling me all this, I've seen it, I've worked it. So
and I can tell you from experience that the Gen Xers that are doing it now are not even half the vocational skills of their fathers.
No, I guarantee you I'm not. The things that my grandfather knew in the oil field, because I worked in the oil field for a little bit, moving drilling rigs. The knowledge that man had compared to the knowledge I have in the oil field is minuscule. And I could tell people about things in the oil field and how things work in the oil field that blow people's mind away just because of knowledge from working in the industry. And I didn't even work that long in the industry. I spent about 5 years in that industry. And before I worked in the oil field, I spent 5 years working in a factory in Pueblo, Colorado. I used to train air conditioners there, industrial-sized air conditioners. I first worked first year on the assembly line. The second to third year, I worked in a little bit of the assembly line, and then I got my certifications in welding. So I was able to do manufacturing welding using MIG and TIG. And I welded the pressure vessels for the condensers for the air conditioners.
Okay.
And I did that for about 2 years. And I was in my 20s. I was young, dumb, and stupid, and I wound up getting terminated from that job. And it was a great job. Part of me wishes I still had it.
Yeah.
I then moved into the oil field because I needed money. I had a house and I had other things I had to pay for. I wasn't going to go delinquent on my debts.
Right.
So I went to work in the oil field. I started as what they call the swamper.
I know what that is.
Yeah. You walk around the trucks and you do the rigging for them in the mud. The trucks were all chained up for the mud and you had to pull the equipment out to get it out of the fields.
You're the one tromping through the mud with the cable on your back.
Well, I didn't have the cable on my back. I did that the first week. And that goes to the whole skill thing. Sometimes you learn the lessons the hard way. The oil field, you learned it the hard way.
Yeah.
So I learned, instead of carrying it on my back, the truck is there. It's going to the same piece I'm going to load it, because I got to spot them. Leave it on the damn truck. Walk to the load. Guide that truck back to it. Then take it off the truck and put it on the load.
That makes sense.
Work smarter, not harder, dummy. There's a reason why in the oil field, all your first year employees wore green hats. That's where you get the greenhorn from.
Yep.
Talking about labor, the blue collar and the white collar. In the oil field, it's the blue hats and the white hats and the green hats. Mm-hmm. Your white hats were your knowledge, skilled labor. Your green hats were your idiots.
Now, on this same note, was it 76% of high school graduates currently have never even been talked to about a working class job?
No. A lot of them are focusing on college jobs.
Right.
Or going to college. And I understand this. Because it's that, I could see it from both men and women's perspective. And this goes back to nature.
Okay.
Men and women want to get together.
Well, yeah.
Men want to catch that beautiful woman and have her for his life,
Mm-hmm.
or his wife. Wife. He doesn't really know it's a ball and chain that they don't want to get into.
That's another show.
That's another show. And for women, they want to catch that guy that's going to be able to provide everything they want and need.
Yeah.
And I saw a statistic where there was almost over 60% of college students are women, mm-hmm. and smaller men. And it's because the women are seeking these white-collar men to provide them with everything they need and want, especially with a harder economy, where homes, like housing crisis and everything like this is hard.
Right. But the value of that 4-year degree has declined in the last 20 years.
Well, yeah.
Significantly.
Oh, yeah. And I see that on the horizon. Yeah. Everybody sees artificial intelligence. Yeah, my doggy's thinking about going outside. It's cold outside, and she went out the doggy door.
She wasn't sure.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I lost topic with my dog. What were we talking about? College education decline.
You were talking about chasing the tail.
Chasing the tail. And I think men are starting to wake up and realize, I don't see a future in college, and with artificial intelligence. So, like, a lot of people thinking that was what it was about, artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence, it's going to take away a lot of those white-collar jobs.
It is.
It's going to start with management.
It's going to take away a lot of blue-collar jobs, too.
It's going to take away a lot of blue-collar jobs, but you're always going to have that blue-collar person that has to push the button.
True.
To initiate things.
Yeah.
The AI is going to do a lot of the automation.
Yeah.
But you're always going to have somebody either loads, unloads, or pushes the button.
And that person that loads, unloads, and pushes the button is probably going to be an electrical engineer.
Even though he doesn't need that much education, he just needs to make sure that the machines are functioning.
What if he has to program the machine?
You're right. But that could also be done by a vocational education.
It could. It could. It doesn't have to be a degree.
It doesn't have to be a degree.
And the manufacturer could even subsidize that education with
Just like they did welders when I welded.
with an apprenticeship program.
That's it. And that's the thing. These companies, there's always a will, there's always a way.
Yeah.
Companies have to be profitable. What they did with buying back their shares to make more money is kind of skeevy, but
It is. I mean, Mike Rose started this whole realization that we're headed down the wrong path. And I mean,
dirty jobs.
yeah, and I'm just throwing this out there saying here's the history of it. This is where we went wrong.
It is where we went wrong. We because everybody wants that super high paying job. And I think a lot of it has to do with movies.
But they're leaving high paying jobs laying on the table.
Oh yeah.
And they're getting a 4-year degree and using that 4-year degree to be a manager at Taco Bell.
Oh yeah. Well, like I was looking into industries in North Carolina where the Beacon oil field, they have that's where the when Trump opens up drilling, that's going to be one of the big areas where he's going to open up a lot of the drilling. When he opens that up, I was looking at just what I was doing in the oil field, what it pays. They're starting at $30 an hour to $40 an hour, and that's per hour. And
Right.
remember, or what I remembered from the oil field, you work tirelessly.
Yeah.
They don't work 40 hours a week.
No.
They work minimum 60 hours a week.
Right.
So time and a half, they are making bank. Because you think about it, that's close to $100,000 job a year. That's a $100K job.
Yeah.
I was just looking at it, see what the values are of that current job in an area where it's regarded, and I was seeing that. And I was wow.
The company that I'm with right now is over 700 drivers. 300 of that 700 make more than 100,000 a year.
Yeah. So there you go. We're both CDL drivers. The trade, I think, is where it's going to be at in the future. So
Until they have self-driving buses.
well, yeah, I don't think if it comes to that and I'm able to do it, I don't want to. I don't want to go somewhere where it's cold and I got to chain up and deal with mud. But if I had to, I would do it.
Yeah. Or you can be the one that pushes the button.
I'd much rather be the one pushing the
Just sit in the driver's seat and watch it drive.
Yeah. Push that fire extinguisher button or the emergency stop button and fill out a report on what happened to this individual.
Lynx actually had an automated bus.
Did they really?
Yes. It was running the limo line.
Oh, wow.
It was an all-electric bus that was automated, fully automated. But there was an operator that sat in the driver's seat and hit the stop button if it got too close to something. Because it had the sensors to tell it, there is an obstacle there. The problem is those sensors weren't really good enough to tell it what the distance was to that object. And it got in accidents with the other limo buses.
Oh, wow.
The buses were hitting each other because the automated bus would just plow right into them.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, of course you had to have an operator.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I think this segment we were thinking about it was going to be short or long. Well, it was going to be long because you had a lot of...
Well, there's a lot of statistics that I threw out, and a lot of information that I threw out there.
Yeah, you can't.
I just wanted to come in with some background.
Joe, you did it. You hit it out of the park. With that, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And without good, there's only evil.
There can't be evil without good.
Try to be good. All right. I think that was a better ending.
I hope so.